Robbin. It's nice to have you with us today.
Hi, Laura. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so for folks who are joining us, I'm Laura Papero with Quest, and here talking today with Robbin Velayedam from Oracle, who is now the Senior Director of Product Strategy for Cloud HCM, with a focus on move to cloud. But as many of you guys will recognize, was recently and for the past many years running PeopleSoft HCM strategy. So he is uniquely positioned to be able to really talk about move to cloud and some of the benefits and differences and things to think about as you and your organization consider your cloud strategy. So we've invited Robbin to come share his words of wisdom with us today, and look forward to hearing what he has to say. Robbin, is there anything you'd like to say before we get started?
You said it exactly right, so appreciate that. I just also appreciate the relationship that we have with Quest. I say this at every conference and almost every webinar we do together because Quest has really enabled us to get our message out, whether it's PeopleSoft messaging or the cloud strategy messaging. You guys do a lot more than that, I know, but personally, I've been involved with all of that, so really do appreciate the relationship that Oracle and Quest have.
Likewise, I think it's one of the things that makes it such a great community is how closely we work together. So we likewise appreciate that. All right, so first up with question one, because I know folks are really interested in understanding what you've been doing since you left the PeopleSoft team.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and that's good because I have so many relationships with our PeopleSoft customers over the years. I spent 23 years on the PeopleSoft side of the house, working in product management, product development, product strategy, and in product strategy is really where I got to learn, about our customers and what they're doing with PeopleSoft, what are some of the things they want to do with PeopleSoft, and then also managing the roadmap, getting input from PeopleSoft customers. And I would say over the past year or so, as I've been talking to PeopleSoft customers about the roadmap, about the roadmap that we're doing on PeopleSoft, but also what their roadmap is for their PeopleSoft installation, right? Invariably the conversation turns to cloud. Customers are starting to ask, hey, when are we supposed to think about transitioning to the cloud? And if so, what applications should we be looking at? What should we be doing now to prepare for that? And it's becoming more and more part of that roadmap conversation. And so I really saw it as a sign for me to learn more about our cloud applications. It's something that it's very difficult to do while you're working in the PeopleSoft group because we have so much going on in the PeopleSoft side. It's almost like another job to keep up with what's going on the cloud side and be able to share that with customers. I realized I couldn't do that from the PeopleSoft side of the house. If I was going to really learn about the cloud product and how it could benefit PeopleSoft customers, I needed to be on that side of the house. So that's when I decided to make that transition. My boss, Paco, everybody knows Paco, who runs all of PeopleSoft development. He was fully supportive of it, and so was my new boss, Yvette Cameron, who's actually a former PeopleSofter, by the way. She runs the strategy team for Cloud HCM, and my goal was to work for her on that team, but focus on helping PeopleSoft customers understand the value and what it takes to transition to the cloud. So that's what I've been transitioning ever since late last year, kind of get to know the product, get to know the team, and so that I am more equipped to share what I know with PeopleSoft customers.
With the benefit of your wisdom now from having worked on both sides of the fence there, what's your point of view at this point? Do PeopleSoft customers need to move to the cloud?
Yeah, great question. So
everybody wants to know.
Yeah, everybody wants to know that, right? So I think there's an operative word that you used in that question, and that is the word need.
Yeah.
I would say that there is not a need to move to the cloud because everybody knows, too, Laura, that Oracle has this apps unlimited premier support policy where we're supporting our on-premise PeopleSoft customers for uh, through 2035 at least, right? And we've been very consistent that that's a rolling 10 years commitment to making sure that the PeopleSoft product is well supported and continues to get new functionality. So there isn't a need to move. I want to make that very clear. But the question is probably the better question is, should you move? Right? And whenever you say should, then you start to bring in different opinions about, what it takes to do it and what's the value around it. So I would say the short answer is no to need, but I think that that customers should consider moving, transitioning to the cloud. And I'll give you a couple reasons why I say that. First is the pace of adoption in the cloud is faster and easier, right? The application is updated automatically by the Oracle development team. They get updates 4 times a year. So whereas on the PeopleSoft side, all PeopleSoft customers know that no matter what great things the development team puts into the product, if the customer doesn't apply those changes in their environment, which sometimes can take time, it'll never see the light of day for that customer. So oftentimes the delivered version of PeopleSoft looks dramatically different than what the customer is running. And that's a source of frustration. I get it. But that's the way it's been for years and years and years, right? That's just the way the lifecycle management works for PeopleSoft, totally different on the cloud side. So if you're running in the cloud on Oracle Cloud HCM side, you're getting access to new features, bug fixes, all the things that go along with maintaining and growing the application automatically. And then it's up to you whether you want to start using it or switch it on or not.
From that perspective, it removes that dependency on an individual company's selective adoption strategy. And it's more, is that a fair perspective?
Yeah. So, and I understand some customers will tell me, well, we kind of like the idea of having control over when we selectively, when and what we take, right? The selective adoption part. On the PeopleSoft side, I have complete control. I can take a feature if I want to, or I cannot take a feature if I don't want to. I can get current when I want to, right? So that sense of control is a benefit of running PeopleSoft. The problem is that in order to plan ahead and figure out which features you want to selectively adopt in PeopleSoft, what fixes you're going to take, which image you're going to get current on, all of those things can take a back seat to other more important projects internally. And what ends up happening is that each day that you don't get current or don't take that particular feature means that there's going to be more prerequisites. So it's going to take longer to test that new feature. And whereas on the cloud side, it's just in there. Yeah, you gotta log in and make sure that it does work in the capacity that you want it to work, and understand the features and configuration options. But overall, the difference is you don't have to take the time to actually apply it in the database. It's automatically there. But I would say one thing to that is because PeopleSoft shifted to this selective adoption model many years ago, I think customers are now kind of in tune with more frequent updates of the application. A couple of years ago or several years ago, if we were saying, hey, we're going to give you updates 4 times a year, customers like, no way, we can't handle that. That's too much coming at us, right? But I think now customers understand that although the application is getting updated 4 times a year, you don't have to take it if you don't want to. But the downside is if you don't take it, it becomes harder and harder to take those updates in PeopleSoft later on.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then the other things that I think are reasons why customers should consider transitioning to the cloud is we now have a lot of customers that have already made that transition. I'm more conservative in nature, even though I work in IT. I don't like to be the first person to update my phone when the new iPhone updates come out. I'm just not that type. But and I think most of our PeopleSoft customers are more conservative too, and they're happy with PeopleSoft. It works. It does what they need it to do. There isn't that, you know, they don't want to be, customers don't typically want to be the first one or the trailblazer, out the gate to go. But now we've got so many former PeopleSoft customers that have transitioned over to the cloud HCM application that there's plenty of them for our customers who are thinking about doing it to talk to, right? To pick their brain, ask them how it worked, what did they do that worked well, what were best practices, what went right, what went wrong. And I think that helps with a decision to go
Yeah.
and make sure that you don't have to blaze a trail, where it takes a lot longer to do than maybe you thought. So I think that's very helpful too.
Yeah, my observation there as well, and you can probably tell me if this is a fair one, but is that there are enough customers at this point that you really have some industry groups that are also kind of appearing, where you really have a lot of healthcare customers who have moved, or a lot of higher ed customers, or a lot of public sector, and you could go on, but that you really can go find not only other customers, but other customers in your industry to get a sense of like how that transition has gone, and or some of the critical issues for your particular business, because you're a healthcare customer, you can talk through with another customer who knows what that, how intimately important those things are in your
Yeah.
organization structure. Yeah.
One thing that we've learned over the years that PeopleSoft customers love to share their experiences and what they've done. It's a great community, and that extends into on the cloud side. When I talk to PeopleSoft customers that have transitioned over to the cloud, and they bring that same sentiment, to the cloud side, and are more than willing to share with PeopleSoft customers what their experience has been like. And so I'm really happy to see that type of community still exists, even though that customer has transitioned over to the cloud. I'll also say, Laura, that there are customers not only I'm willing to bet any customer out there, we have a customer in that industry that's already done it, right? But there's also probably customers with the same profile, the same size, number of employees, number of countries that did, multinational or domestic, state and local. I mean, it's just, there's enough customers now that I just feel like there's plenty of examples that customers can talk to that are similar to what they're like, including like the number of customizations they've done, how long they've been running PeopleSoft, et cetera. And I'll also share one other story with you, Laura, that is pretty interesting. There are customers, PeopleSoft customers, that have transitioned to cloud where when we talked to them like 5 years ago, they said, no way they're transitioning to the cloud. Like it was a non-starter. We've had people tell us that don't even talk to us about cloud. We don't even want to hear about it. And now here they are either transitioning to the cloud now or have already done that. And I just think it's just kind of the nature of the way things have evolved and changed, and good on them to revisit their decision. I mean, they felt passionate about that 5 years ago, but they had reason to. Maybe the application wasn't ready. Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they didn't understand the benefits, were concerned about, how things worked in the cloud, or there weren't enough referenceable customers. But now those things are gone, I think.
Absolutely. I think attitudes have changed a lot. Attitudes and realities have changed a lot in 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other two items that I'll mention about the idea of customers should consider moving, there are plenty of configuration options and delivered features in the product on the cloud side that weren't there, a couple years ago or 5 years ago, whenever maybe the last time a PeopleSoft customer looked at or thought about the cloud, because the pace of development in the cloud on the cloud side is very fast, right? So I think when I look at the delivered features, there are features that the PeopleSoft product has that the cloud HCM product has. Then there's also features in the cloud product that go beyond what's in PeopleSoft. And then more recently, there's been a whole lot of discussion around how to leverage generative AI in our enterprise application. I mean, everybody's talking about it, right? At least on the consumer side, but it's just a matter of time when users are going to expect to be able to get access to generative AI capabilities in their enterprise application. it always happens that way, right? So, if you're able to easily do something in your personal life using your phone or computer, you start to think, well, why can't I do that in my business life, right? And you shouldn't accept anything less when it comes to technology and access to things that you do on a normal basis. So I think the fact that the fact that the cloud team has embedded generative AI capabilities in the cloud HCM product, and that's something that we are not going to be doing on the PeopleSoft side. I think you start to see that from a roadmap perspective, that the cloud HCM roadmap is different than the PeopleSoft HCM roadmap. And customers need to evaluate both roadmaps and figure out if that plays a role into their decision, whether they transition or not.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's some really cool, at least I've been kind of following along on a lot of the AI agent stuff, which is just super exciting when you start to see what's there. So
Yeah, it's super cool. We've been able to demo it a lot, like at Cloud World and also at individual um, special interest group meetings and whatnot. And it's it's uh, it's I think everybody that the audience, our customers that view these demos and kind of hear how we're planning on embedding Gen AI and the agents within the product, no one has stepped up and said this is not useful. No, and I'm talking even our most conservative customers, they're all on board with what we're doing. They're thinking through how they can use it, and we know that it's important for us to have configuration options to keep it flexible so that customers don't have to deploy it everywhere in the product. They can maybe select a few places and start with that. So we're very measured with how we do it, but we also understand that embedding Gen AI within the Oracle Cloud HCM product is a differentiator, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be normal moving forward. Like you're going to just expect to be able to, for example, leverage Gen AI to create a job rec for me, that I can use as a template, or help me write a performance review for an employee, help me figure out my succession plan for all of my key positions. Like, there's no reason why we can't use Gen AI to do some of these things that either help with content creation in the product for our daily work, or to help us make decisions in HCM.
for those who decide to go, what are the reasons that they're making the move? Because I would imagine that it's different across the board for customers, although maybe there's some themes that emerge.
Yeah. So we talked about kind of access to technology, the different roadmap, and getting features faster. Right? So I think that's one factor that customers look at. Another factor is we have customers that just want to kind of get out of that business of managing the applications and the hardware and the middleware and the connectivity and everything that goes along with it, right? So there's a cost to running the application, PeopleSoft application. It's borne by the functional team, but more by the IT team, the technical team, right? We're seeing some customers want to kind of get out of the business of maintaining the application, figuring out the hardware that they need for the application, the total cost of ownership. They want to either reduce that or kind of get out of that business altogether. And that's what the benefit of going to a kind of a cloud application does for you, right? You don't have to manage it anymore. You don't have to have the hardware resources to do it. And you don't even have to maintain or manage it. Like, it's all done for you. So you don't have to have these schedules where you plan have a dedicated team to work with your functional team to do these updates, right? So there's a physical, like a hard cost to running PeopleSoft, but then there's also the time and labor cost to running. So I think customers view longer term that there's a better cost model for them if Oracle is doing the management of the system instead of their team. Mm-hmm. There's also the mitigation of risk of having fewer PeopleSoft resources. So the reality is that a lot of us PeopleSofters, lifetime PeopleSofters like me, we're getting older, right? And that pool of PeopleSoft talent, which used to be almost endless, back in the 90s and 2000s and whatnot, like it's starting to shrink. People are starting to retire, and our customers are feeling that too. And so there's fewer and fewer people who understand the PeopleSoft system, and as time goes on, there'll be even less, right? And so customers are starting to rely. We have great partners out there that know PeopleSoft really well, and they'll engage with them. But over time, we know that it's a risk. It's a strategic enterprise risk where there are fewer and fewer people who understand the product, and you'll have uh, less access to those resources in the future. I think that's another reason why customers are looking at transitioning. Sometimes there's a leadership mandate,
Yeah.
right? There's maybe your CHRO or your CIO or your CEO, any CXO, I guess. Anybody in a leadership position may want to. We've heard of them saying, "Hey, we got to move a certain percentage of our applications to the cloud. I want to get this moving, and how can we get that done?" And that's something that customers will have to comply with if their leadership is asking or mandating a certain number of applications move to the cloud. And the last thing I say is customers also are looking at transitioning to the cloud HCM as a way to also transform the way they do HCM.
Yeah.
Right? So new system means new access to new ways to handle talent management, for example, to handle skills in their database, to handle learning, to handle a lot of the things that maybe they've been wanting to do running PeopleSoft but haven't been able to. When you move to a new system like the Oracle HCM system, where they do have capabilities that support transformation, it's a great time to do that. So I think if you look at all of those reasons, some customers have, look at some of those factors more than others, but in general, that's what I'm hearing.
I guess the next question, then, kind of the natural transition from there would be, what do you hear back from customers who've made the transition about the benefits and the ROI that they're then seeing? So those are the reasons why they're looking to change, but what do they actually come back and say they see?
Yeah, so that's a good question because there's one thing of the promising of
Yeah.
what you think is going to happen and what actually happens, right? So what I think what customers are valuing is that access to new features quickly. They're not even trying to keep up with the new features that are being available. They just like to know that those features are there when they're ready. Like there's no extra step that needs to be taken. They don't have to apply an image. They don't have to get current with anything. Like it's already there. And I think part of then what's happening is that now instead of planning for the IT update of the application, they're just now planning for, okay, when do we start using these features? Let's get our functional team ready. Are we going to do a new talent? We're going to do a talent review this year. Are we going to use all the new tools that are in the Oracle Cloud application to do our talent review this year? Or our performance review period, are we going to change that this year? So it's now becoming more of a functional, more people decision and less of a technical decision. And I think that goes a long way from removing the reasons why maybe people aren't embracing the new ways of handling HCM, right? Even the way they recruit people, now that there's a different way that you can recruit people in HCM, cloud HCM, let's start doing that, and they have access to doing that. They no longer have to wait for the feature to be available. I think another thing that I've seen as a benefit is customers are now repurposing their PeopleSoft technical team to work on other things within the enterprise, right? So they freed up all this time that they spend updating PeopleSoft, applying patches, setting up new databases for the functional team to use for testing and whatnot. They don't have to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So those folks now are being repurposed to do other things that are technical in nature for that team and to help the enterprise. And that goes a long way to benefit and just overall being more efficient and being able to use those resources other ways. So those are some of the things that I see. And then just the general excitement of being able to access things like embedded Gen AI in the system, which I think in turn wows the employees, right?
Yeah.
And look, I mean, everybody's competing for talent, right? Everybody's competing to get the best and the brightest. And one of the first applications or the first impressions a customer will make with a new employee or new recruit or candidate is HR, right? I mean, that's usually the first system you log into. So why not have that be a great experience, so that the new talent coming in will stay with the organization, right? And decide to grow their career with you. I mean, it's a first impression, and it's an important impression, I think.
Yeah, start them off with one of those new onboarding journeys that everyone seems to get excited about with Cloud HCM. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, you're right. I agree.
I was gonna say, there's one other question that prompted for me related to the resourcing, because when we have new Cloud HCM customers, usually coming from PeopleSoft, but sometimes from other systems, and they get together in some of our online groups, one of the biggest questions is like staffing model. So, when you talk about like repurposing your PeopleSoft resources, I think people are still trying to get their heads wrapped around like what kinds of resources do you need when you're running a cloud app for HCM as opposed to PeopleSoft? Can you talk just a little bit about what those roles might be?
Yeah. So I think if you got to look at it from the functional side and then also from the technical side, right? So in answering that last question, I was focused more on the technical side because you no longer have the hardware or the software to manage, right? There is no hardware or software for the customer to manage. And from an IT perspective, there will certainly be integrations that need to be managed, but the IT team was managing those integrations anyway. So I think taking all of the management of the PeopleSoft application off of their plate allows them to do other things. The integration, of course, they'll have to understand how the integration works with the cloud product. So they'll be able to understand a little bit more the new Fusion technology, which, I think most IT folks would love to have that on their resume. So I think they look forward to working with the new technology that's leveraged. We leverage a lot of open source technology as well, which technical folks love to tinker with new tools. Why wouldn't you, right? That's the fun part of IT. You get to work with different tools and see how it works. So I think from that perspective, that's the type of capabilities you'll need on the technical side. On the functional side, um, customers think to themselves, well, I know how PeopleSoft works, but I don't have any clue how the cloud product works. So I'm going to have to learn how the cloud product works functionally, at least where I navigate. How do I run the reports that I'm doing today in PeopleSoft? How do I create my own custom reports? Like all these things, and it can be a little daunting. I mean, I'm not here to tell you that it's just you hit a magic button and all of a sudden you know everything you need to know about the new product and you can leave everything PeopleSoft behind. It's not like that. But what's interesting is that the people who know the PeopleSoft product very well become very important as part of this process. Because if the organization decides to transition, those functional people will be trained to learn how to use the cloud product. And then they'll be relied upon to help map the data that's in PeopleSoft to the data that's in the cloud product. And those people become invaluable moving forward. I've had customers tell me that they think that they won't be needed once a new system gets implemented. And that's not, I have interviewed so many customers and asked them specifically this question, Laura, and not one of them, all of them came back with the same answer that they need the PeopleSoft folks that are working on PeopleSoft now to help with the transition, which we know that takes time. But once the transition is done, we still need those folks because they know both systems. And there may be a period of time where you have to run both systems, maybe a few applications here and there, but they become more valuable. And so they need to learn how to use the system and how to configure the system, just like they had to learn the PeopleSoft system. So that's something that they would have to learn.
Yeah, so a critical point of continuity from that perspective then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that know both systems. We need them, right? We needed to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really the difference between running PeopleSoft on-prem and running Cloud HCM, for example?
Yeah. So again, if we look at it from I guess I'll answer the question from the application itself. So um, big difference. If you're a PeopleSoft user today, you have to plan out when your updates are going to happen. You have to work with your IT team to figure out, well, which features do we want to selectively adopt, like we talked about earlier. The IT team usually tells you when they're going to have to take the system down to update the tools version, maybe get current with the apps version. Then the functional team has to work with the technical team in a certain window to test it, right? And then work with their users or their stakeholders to figure out, well, which features are we going to turn on and have people use, right? So that's a whole process. PeopleSoft customers have been doing it for years. It's a lengthy process, so that we know it's lengthy because customers typically don't do it every single image release, right?
Mhm.
We release 3 times a year on the PeopleSoft side, and so no one does. Very few customers, I would say, does follows that process 3 times a year. Usually it's once a year, right? Once every 15 months or so, because it takes time. The change now on the cloud side is that those changes are automatically in the system, right? So the updates happen automatically,
Mhm.
whether you want them or not. Those updates are coming, right? So that's one difference. Now you do have a say in when those changes happen throughout those 4 times a year. Like you could be the first wave or second wave. We call them cohorts or waves. You can
Mhm.
determine which wave you want to be in. But at the end of the day, the changes are going to automatically happen. And new updates happen 4 times a year. So that's the main difference between
Mhm.
running on premise, or even if you're hosted by a partner, PeopleSoft, and running the cloud HCM application. That's the I think the biggest difference that people have to kind of wrap their heads around, that the functionality, all the changes, everything is going to be there. And we have 4 times a year to do it, which also helps with new features. So if a customer wants a new feature, we've got four times in a year to target to get that feature in.
Right. So it's a little bit from a user perspective, it becomes a little bit more like what you go through, in your normal sort of software life, right? Like every so often you have a schedule and your iPhone updates, or every so like your users become also a little bit more familiar with the cadence, I would imagine, because it's more like what you see in the rest of life to a certain extent.
Exactly. And then it's up to, so let's use that analogy because I think it's a great one. So when you get your updates on your phone, you may get a little message that says, "Hey, this update includes A, B, C, D, E, and F." I mean, I don't know how many people read that. Maybe if you're a techie, or if you're real, real techie, or you just like that type of stuff, then you'd review that. But we don't. The natural instinct isn't just to go and start using those things. Some people do because they love that type of stuff, right? They love technology. They love to see, oh, what's new. But a lot of the population probably is like, okay, great, I got a new update. I know I have to take the update. It's coming eventually. You can put it off, but eventually it's going to be there, right? And then ultimately, you are going to use the features. You are going to notice a difference, and you are going to get used to it. And you're right. That's exactly the model that I think everybody expects now. If you talk to I have a hard time explaining to my son the difference between on-premise and the cloud, because he only knows the cloud.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that we had a day where you'd get a disk and you'd put it into your computer and you'd install, your applications, your Microsoft Office or whatever. Like he's like, what? What are you talking about? So this is just the way people have come to get used to getting updates. Is just automatically happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's another piece of the puzzle that we haven't talked about. So we talked about the difference between on-prem and cloud apps. So, going straight to that. But there's also Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI. So what's the difference between running on cloud, going to cloud apps versus running PeopleSoft on OCI?
Yeah, and sometimes I lose customers when we start talking about OCI and the cloud and what they think is the definition of it. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before. It there is another option. Um, so yeah, you're right. What we've been talking about is transitioning from PeopleSoft, whether you're running it on premise at your organization or if maybe a partner you're hosting it through a partner and transitioning to the Oracle Cloud HCM application. That's one scenario. There is another scenario that customers have been looking at, especially if they just want to have a cloud presence, but they're not ready to transition to a whole new system,
Mhm.
right? And that's when what they decide to do is they say, okay, we can take our PeopleSoft environment the way it is right now, the way you've customized it, and you know and you love it. Instead of running it at your organization, have it run in our Oracle Cloud infrastructure. So we essentially are hosting your PeopleSoft environment.
Mhm.
And you're not going to get access to any of the functionality that we've been talking about on the cloud application because it's has nothing to do with the Oracle Cloud application. It's just we are just serving up the infrastructure so that we can host your PeopleSoft environment. That's a good place for customers to go if they're not ready to transition to the cloud applications just yet. They
Mhm.
just haven't built up the political capital to make that transition, or they're just not prepared to make that type of transition yet. It may not be a bad idea in the meantime to take PeopleSoft and move it to the cloud infrastructure. That way, your functional team will still have access to the same functionality. They're not going to get access to the new functionality in the cloud products. But what it does is it alleviates some of the pressure of your IT team that's managing PeopleSoft. They can then leverage the cloud infrastructure and all the different tools that are available in the cloud infrastructure to automate some of the things that they manually do to keep PeopleSoft up and running and current. The things
Mhm.
that they do that the functional team has no clue what they're doing, right? But they have to do it on a regular basis to keep the system patched, updated, and current and running on the best hardware and middleware for performance, right? So all of those things, there's a lot of manual tasks associated with that. But if they're able to move PeopleSoft into the Oracle Cloud infrastructure and take advantage of an application called Cloud Manager, which is part of the tools release, um, they'll be able to save some time and money on the IT side, but they won't get access to new functionality that we've been talking about.
Right. So it's really more, it's the PeopleSoft you know and love in the cloud, but it's some significant perhaps operational efficiencies, but from the software side, it's
Right.
you change,
Not
right?
from the functional side, right? So you're still on the release that you're on, right? So if you were on the functional side, if you were thinking, hey, if we move our PeopleSoft environment to OCI, does that mean we're automatically always on the latest release and taking on all the latest features? I mean, you still have to intentionally, figure out, well, which releases do we want to get current on, and which features do we want to use. So there's still that step that has to happen.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's more of an operational efficiency for the technical team.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's helpful because I do think a lot of people are still kind of working their way through both figuring out their cloud strategy, but also really trying to understand and tease apart those options. So,
Right. Right. And I encourage them. I encourage all. I mean, really, Laura, the reason why I took this new role was because I wanted customers to understand all the options that they have as a PeopleSoft customer, because I want them to be successful moving forward, whether they decide to stay on PeopleSoft for the rest of their lives, or they decide to transition. There are options, and that's the cool thing about Oracle. I have to say that I don't know of any other vendor that allows customers to make this decision. I mean, a very important point here is that customers ask, when are you guys going to make us transition to the cloud, or are you going to make us transition to the cloud apps? And the answer is no. You have the choice. It's up to you. It's up to the customer. right? You are empowered with that decision. If you want to stay on PeopleSoft for a minimum 10 years, we got you covered. If you want to take your PeopleSoft and move it to OCI because you want your technical team to do other things and you want to lower that cost of ownership, we got you covered. If you just say, you know what, I think we've run our course with PeopleSoft, we want something new, we want access to the new stuff that you guys are working on, we got you covered with that too. But no one's here to force you to make that decision. Now, having said that, I've talked to a number of leaders with PeopleSoft customers who don't want to wait until a decision has to be made, right? And I think that's really key, especially if you're in a leadership position. You don't want to wait until Oracle says, okay, we're going to stop with the 10-year support model, today. Because then now you're at a standstill and you've got to figure out what you're going to do with everybody else in the industry, right? With the other thousands of PeopleSoft customers and the EBS customers and the JD Edward customer, right? Like everybody's going to be in the same situation. And as a leader, you always want to have a plan B ready to go. And so I think it's actually helpful to hear customers say that, because I had been saying it for years, but to hear the leadership say, hey, I don't want to be standing still if and when Oracle decides to stop supporting PeopleSoft. I need to be thinking about what our next step is. And that's absolutely the case. And that's why being an Oracle customer is very helpful, because we support the different options for you. And I don't think there's any other vendor that can say that.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about what it takes in terms of time. If an organization decides to move to the cloud, to adopt Cloud HCM, how long does it take to transition to cloud apps?
Man, that is it used to be the $64,000 question. I don't know. Maybe it's $1 million question these days. We get this question a lot, and I always, when I get the question, I always hope that I have a partner, a consultant, an SI, a systems integrator next to me, or maybe somebody from our Oracle consulting services team to help answer that question. Because if anybody gives you a number straight out, as a customer, I'd say you should run the other direction, because it's impossible to measure how long it will take to transition a customer without knowing what they're running today, what customizations they've made, what their vision is for the future, what transformation stuff they want to do, how big their team is. So, I mean, I'm saying all this to say that it really just depends. And I know that's a bad answer to give, but I'd hate to throw a number out and people just hang on that number and come back to me 2 years later saying, hey, Robbin, you said it's only going to take 6 months to do it. It really depends on a number of factors. So I'll say that. But I can say that let me give you some observations that I've seen from people who successfully transitioned, and that can help understand. So of course, I've seen customers who want to get a more positive, they want to get some early successes. Mm-hmm. So what they decided to do is just incrementally start to transition to the cloud. So they'll pick a certain application. Maybe it's something in talent or performance or comp or something, maybe in recruiting, and say, let's deploy one of those and let's get some early wins. Let's get some feel for what it's like to run in the cloud. We'll still keep the majority of our HCM critical processes in PeopleSoft because we have a minimum 10-year support from Oracle, right? So there's no burning platform that we have to transition everything at once. So let's deploy one or two of these applications, and let's do it incrementally so that we can get an idea of what it's like, but also get some immediate gains. And then our organization can start to see the value of transitioning to the cloud. And I can tell you internally, we did that at Oracle. Internally, we've been incrementally deploying cloud apps, turning them on internally. And I think it's been I think that's much more valuable than the big bang approach. Although I know there's some customers that love the big bang approach, there's too many moving parts to do big bang anymore. And the great thing about the cloud product is that you can do it incrementally if you want. I'd say that if you do it incrementally to get those early gains, you should still have a plan to get everything transitioned, because you could fall in love with that one application that you incrementally transitioned over to, and then just sit back, kick your feet up, and just let that run for the next 2 years. You're not doing yourself a good favor, because you have to maintain that integration between PeopleSoft and that application, the cloud application. And ultimately, someone's going to say, why are we using two totally systems, to do this? So there has to be a longer term plan in place to start to incrementally transition all of your apps over time to the cloud. So I would say that. But overall, kind of think about some of the things that will make you a good candidate to transition and will shorten that window that it takes to transition over. There has to be a willingness to change. If they're not passionate about it, or they're not willing to do it at any level, it's going to take you longer to do, much longer. You got to get buy-in from your stakeholders, right? Your stakeholders have to want this change. They have to see the vision that you have for the new stuff that's coming out. And they're like, yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, I want to be able to do that stuff. That's cool. And if they are bought in, then you'll get their assistance in testing and helping with the configurations and making sure that it's a success. And it will take longer. It'll take less time to do it. You need a defined strategy for continuous improvement. That is, and good thing is that since we started selective adoption on the PeopleSoft side, we've introduced that concept to PeopleSoft customers. They understand the idea of, hey, PeopleSoft's coming out with images 3 times a year. That means we have to look at those features more often than once every 2 years, right? Like, we don't have to do it every time they come out with an image, but we should be looking at this on a continuous basis. It's even more important on the cloud side because things are coming out at a faster pace and more often. So you need to be committed to create a strategy. It's usually at the higher level to say, this is what we're going to do. 3 times a year, we're going to turn on the new features and we're going to evaluate and put and deploy it and get people using it, something along those lines. And then you want, if you want new features that are not available out of the box in PeopleSoft, that's when you want to think about the cloud product, because you're going to get access to things that you're just not getting on the PeopleSoft side, right? That's a value. That'll also help drive how long it takes and what you deploy when you get to the cloud. And then the final thing is that if you're just in the position where you just don't want to manage the PeopleSoft system anymore, you just want to get out of that business, that helps tremendously when you get to the cloud apps, because then now you've got people that can be doing other things and can assist with that transition, focus on that transition, knowing that they don't have to really work with the new system. They have less time to spend on the new system. So I think all of those kind of factor into the transition. But if you really want a good answer for that question, a more succinct answer, you got to talk to our partners and call a couple partners, maybe even call the partner that you're using today that's helping you with PeopleSoft, and ask them, say, hey, we just want to whiteboard with you. What do you think it would take? And start from there.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what it really sounds like is every customer's implementation is unique. Every customer's situation is unique. And you really need to build your plan around that. For organizations that are developing that cloud strategy with an eye toward, we're going to do it. We're not quite sure when, we're not quite sure how yet, but we're going to do it. How do you get cloud ready? Like, what are the things that you as an organization can do in advance that probably help you now regardless, but will be incredibly valuable at the point that you're ready to, pull that switch and say, yep, we're doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love talking to customers about this, especially at a time now where they can think through these things, right? And kind of take a longer term approach. Like, it's actually okay if they're not planning on transitioning until, a couple of years from now. But I don't want them to wait a couple of years from now and then try to start figuring out what they do. There are things that you can do now, right? So I would say the first thing you want to do is, even whether you're deciding to transition this year or next year or whatever, a couple years down the road, don't forget about keeping your PeopleSoft current, right? It's very easy to think, oh, we're going to this new application, so let's spend all of our time and resources on that new app, learning it, and then forgetting about PeopleSoft. You don't want to do that, because that's the biggest risk mitigator, is to keep your PeopleSoft current. Right. So that's number one. Keep that current, because related to our last question, we don't know how long it's going to take to transition, and so we don't know how long you're going to have to continue to run PeopleSoft. So don't neglect PeopleSoft. Stay current with the tools release. Stay current as much as you can with the apps on the app side. Keep it patched. Keep it happy. Keep your customers happy on PeopleSoft. That's number one. The second thing is, I would review what's going on the cloud side twice a year. I used to say once a year, but things are happening so fast on the cloud side that I think it's important to find some time, maybe like a lazy Friday afternoon, if you have one, like in the middle of the year, and then one towards the end of the year, and just go through some of the online tools that we have for demos. Or you can even reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share with you kind of what's new in the cloud side, because it's changing so fast, and you just want to be aware of those new features that are coming. That's the one thing. That's another thing. And then as you learn about what's going on the cloud side, as you learn, by watching this interview, share with your team what you are learning about the cloud, because you need to demystify the notion of cloud with many of our PeopleSoft customer users. I mean, I didn't know a whole lot about the cloud product until I was intentional about learning about it, because I was so focused on PeopleSoft, and our customers are focused on PeopleSoft. They spend all day in PeopleSoft. They need somebody to tell them, educate them on what the cloud really is, some of the things that we talked about today. They need to you need to demystify the cloud for them, so that they don't think it's just something that's just we're gonna plop it into their system and they're just gonna be out of a job the next day. Like, they need to understand everything that goes along with cloud, including all the different ways we use the term cloud, right? It can be confusing.
Yeah.
And another thing that we kind of touched on earlier is, look at your customizations that you have in PeopleSoft and curate that list. Like, and we have tools that allow you to do that, right? And there are partners that are really good at doing that. But there's tools in the system that can help you review all your customizations and look at what's being used and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And have your team maybe get together in a conference room and just go through the customizations from large to small and ask, do we still need them? Right? And at the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to find some of them that you just don't need anymore, and you can remove them from your PeopleSoft environment, test to make sure it didn't break anything else, and then your system is that much easier to update every year. Even if you stay on PeopleSoft forever, at least you've benefited from that, right? But the real reason I want you to do that is to understand what are the key things that changes you've made to PeopleSoft that you're going to kind of expect to be able to do in the cloud product. Mm-hmm. Don't assume that you're just going to have to customize whatever you did in PeopleSoft and then customize it in the cloud apps, because the cloud apps delivered may do it the way you had it customized or approximate it, right? And if that's the case, we need to show you how you do it in the cloud and see if you're okay with it. And if not, then there are ways that you can actually customize the cloud through bolt-ons, but you don't want to get to that point just yet, because the one thing I don't want customers to do, I don't advise customers to do, is say, okay, here's our PeopleSoft environment customized over the last 20 years that you've been using it. I want to recreate that in the cloud HCM app. That's something you don't want to do, right? That doesn't provide value in any way. It's too expensive to do it that way. It's not the trend moving forward of how you want to handle that. Plus, you kind of limit the amount of new functionality that you can leverage in the new system. So look at your customizations. And while you're doing that, ask your stakeholders, what are some other things that you wish the system could do for you? What's your wish list of new functionality that you've always wanted, but you haven't been able to get it in PeopleSoft, whether it's because our team hasn't delivered it or it's in the system, but the customer's team hasn't been able to unlock it to allow you to use it. Make that list because that'll help drive, I think, the reason for transitioning to the cloud. And a lot of those things may already be included in the cloud. And then the final thing I'll say is to get ready is to engage with us first. If you want to see demos, if you want to learn more about the difference in functionality and stuff, of course, we have a sales team that can support you. But if your team's not ready for a sales team if you're not ready to be sold, let's say, there's still ways that through me and some of the other resources that we have going on, that we can help you understand the cloud world a little bit better, so that you're that much more prepared when your organization does decide to go through a sales cycle. So we have ways of teaching you how things are working without having to go through a sales cycle.
So if you are thinking about, moving to cloud, if you're maybe in an active learning mode, or even if you're in a planning mode, if you're squarely in that like move to cloud sort of headspace, what research, so they can come, reach out to you, they can talk to a partner. What other resources would you recommend? Because I think it really is getting comfortable and getting informed, right?
It is, yeah, and that's why I'm here. That's my focus, is to help PeopleSoft customers understand and feel comfortable with the cloud, so that when they do go to make that decision, that very important decision to do it, that they're informed and that they understand what to expect. And it's too big of a decision to not do that. And I know that some of the PeopleSoft customers I talk to, depends on what level they're at, they may not even be a part of those decisions, but or at least maybe not part of it early on. So, but that doesn't mean they can't still learn about it and understand, what's going on. So, through the help of your team, Laura, we created this PeopleSoft on-premise to, what was it called? PeopleSoft to Cloud special interest group. I forgot the name. I'm sorry.
Move to cloud.
It's a move to cloud. That's right. Move to cloud. And that's focused specifically on PeopleSoft customers who just want to learn about what it's like and ask questions. I plan on, we've had a couple sessions already. We meet first and third Tuesday of every month. And we have a good cross section of customers, technical and functional. We've got customers that have already made the move. We've got customers in the middle of making the move, customers that don't think they're going to move for years, like a whole diverse group, which is great. And it's just a great place for us, customers only, where we can ask questions, and I'll invite guests to help answer questions and whatnot. So that's a great place to start. And that's on the Quest website. And there's also some online resources. Like if you go to peoplesoftinfo.com and you click on cloud, you have access to not only the cloud applications we've been talking about, but also the OCI discussion that we had. You'll get access to that. On oracle.com, we have product compares between the Oracle Cloud product and our competitors. One thing you won't see on there is a comparison between the Oracle Cloud product and PeopleSoft. And I know a lot of customers want to know the difference. That's something that we can talk about and learn through the group. If they join the group, we can certainly cover that there. There's product tours on oracle.com. So if you want to see like, how does employee self-service work? How does manager self-service work? How does the comp work? How does recruiting work? So they're little just vignette demos that you can just click on and watch those. So there's a number of different ways to kind of start to learn about the cloud without having actually to go through a sales cycle. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we are, for Blueprint in particular, we're going to create a little track with some sessions that focus specifically on PeopleSoft move to cloud, or on-premise move to cloud. So while you're at Blueprint, you'll be able to also attend a couple sessions. I'll be doing a couple sessions so that you can spend time learning the PeopleSoft stuff, but then also have a few sessions to learn about the cloud.
Awesome. I think I would echo that for those of you who have been listening to the conversation. I think there's some real excitement around the group that Robbin is co-hosting with Quest. So It's the PeopleSoft Move to Cloud group, as he was saying, and you guys meet online. It's open and free to any PeopleSoft customer to come join. So highly encourage you guys to check that one out. And then likewise, we're really excited about the Move to Cloud program that we will be running this year at Blueprint, and excited, Robbin, to welcome you back in your new role. You've always we love having you there, and we're so glad that you're coming back. You're just not in the same program this year, but
Right.
yeah. But and to that end, this really, I think, has been a great conversation, and some really really tangible, I think, nuggets of information and insights that hopefully can help people understand some of those most common questions about, the move to cloud and how to evaluate where you are, what your options are, how to get ready, all of those pieces. So thank you, as always, for taking the time to talk to us today. You're really you've been an invaluable part of Quest for a very long time with the PeopleSoft community, and it's exciting to actually work with you now on the move to cloud and the cloud app side. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for PeopleSoft customers to leverage the cloud and to leverage the fact that you're part of the Oracle, that Oracle is your vendor, right? We are your partner in technology, not just in PeopleSoft. And I think PeopleSoft customers, once you start to see the advantage of having access to other Oracle products and technologies, I think taking advantage of that is really a smart thing to do for our PeopleSoft customers. So, and I want to help, right? I want to help do that, and that's why I made this change, is because I wanted to help customers get the authentic view on what is actually happening, and share with them the things that they can take advantage of. So really happy to do this.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to continuing the collaboration on all this. And thank you again for a great conversation today.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.